Are we ready, Alex? All right, well, good afternoon, everybody. It's less than 72 hours from now, weather cooperating. We will be somewhere inside the first 100 miles or so of the 101st running of the Indianapolis 500, which is pretty exciting. Last year, we started about this time leading into the 100th with operational briefings just to keep everybody updated on how we are operating in terms of getting folks in, where to park. A lot of the things that last year, because we sold out, were significant issues for us. This year, we will have, I believe, the best crowd that the Indy 500 has had in the last 15 years, with the exception of last year. So ticket sales continue to be really, really strong. We aren't going to sell out the event this year, so we will continue to sell tickets through race day. Where last year, I think by this time last year, we had stopped selling tickets, so we're going to continue to sell. The Snake Pit will probably be pretty close to a sellout or right before the end, but we still plan on. I think we're going to get to that point where we can continue to sell, but that may be the only thing that we'll be coming back to you here in the next few hours and let you know if we need to end that beforehand. But we wanted to give you a little bit of an operational briefing on where we are, but I think the first thing I'd like to do is address the two elephants in the room. The first of which is what we saw a couple of nights ago in England. The issues we've had there, we've had a lot of folks asking how the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and the Indy 500 has prepared, or have we prepared differently with respect to what's going on in the world today. And I think the easiest way to describe that is if you rewind a few years to the Boston bombing in 2013. That was a huge wake-up call for the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and we were really the second major public event to be held after the Boston bombing. The first was the Kentucky Derby. And we made some significant changes as it related to our gates, as it related to what we allowed folks to bring into the venue, and how we were going to manage that. In fact, we changed at some level the way we managed our parking in the infield. So if you are parking in the infield in turn 3, we know who you are now. You have to purchase a pass from the Speedway, give us your name, give us your address, so we can begin to control that. So a lot of things took place then. Last year, in January, we hired Mike Bates from IMPD to come in and really help us take our security to the next level. And much of that security piece, there's some that's operational, but much of it is just communication. And Mike spent so much time here in this community putting on big events, working with both the state local folks as well as the federal folks. And we've got a better relationship and a better line of communication than we've ever had at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And that's not just in the month of May, but it continues throughout the year so that we can prepare and align our thoughts and processes directly with local, state, and federal authorities. So Mike has been a significant addition to us. And as the world has continued to change, you remember last year we had some issues with Paris and some other places that made it difficult for us leading into the 100th. We made some changes there, and having Mike here over the last 18 months, I think, has really made us operate better as it relates to just the changing climate throughout the world. So our fans will notice the same entry operations as they've seen in the past. We will be continuing to work through checking those coolers as they come in. Cooler sizes remain 14 by 14 by 18. There will be, I think one thing that fans may notice this year, there will be an increased presence of law enforcement folks, armed law enforcement folks wandering through the grounds. That is here to make sure that we are showing that we do have a presence of police officers in addition to the normal number of officers that we have here, both in uniform and plainclothes throughout the facility. So we will continue to make sure that we have all those folks here at the Speedway this year as we go forward. We're pretty comfortable with the plan that we have. We are continuing daily on a regular basis throughout the day, talking to local, state, and federal authorities to make sure that there are no threats. And at this point, there's nothing that we are aware of from the Speedway standpoint. And if there ever is something that comes up, you guys will be the first to know. But we feel pretty good about that plan. I think some of you know that we're a Tier 2 event. We used to be a Tier 3 event. That's the way that the federal government looks at large events. So a Tier 1 would be the Super Bowl and the Republican and Democrat national committees, as an example. We are a Tier 2, and what that really means is we get a lot more asset support from our federal government, much of which is asset support that is unseen and things that we can't talk about, but we feel very comfortable make the experience here for the Indianapolis Motor Speedway customer extremely more safe. So we are continuing that, and again, that's part of what Mike Bates and his team are focused on every day as we move forward. So the second elephant relates to a Hoosier who happened to relocate to the east of us earlier this year. We have, like all of you, been aware that there is a possibility that the Vice President of the United States could be here at for the Indy 500. We are not in a position yet because we have not heard any confirmation yet from the Vice President's office to confirm or deny it. However, I can tell you that we are preparing for that if in fact it does happen. And as soon as we know whether he's coming or not, and I think we are hoping they will let us know no later than end of the day tomorrow. Once we know that, we will quickly have another one of these briefings and let you know if at all it's going to impact our customers and our fans as they come to the Speedway. That said, I would just, and this is similar to where we were last year, and this maybe transitions us from those first two elephants into the more mundane but extremely important part of the operational briefing. That said, I would continue to remind our customers to please come as early as possible. The most important thing we harped on last year was really plan and prepare at home, know where you're going to go, know where you're going to park, come early, and be patient. That is how it always happens here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, just the sheer number of folks that come in. So it is really helpful to the extent that people are here early. We will continue to do a lot of the things pre-race this year that we did last to get some activity on the track and some things making it worth the time to come and sit in your seats. So the Borg-Warner March was an example of something that we added last year. That will happen again this year, including Johnny Rutherford helping bring the Borg-Warner to the start-finish line. It'll arrive about 10 at the start-finish line and be presented to the Speedway so we can hold it until we figure out who we're going to actually crown the Indy 500 winner. So that's one of the things. We'll have the rolling stages again with music. We'll have a bunch of pre-race activities with veteran drivers and race cars. A lot of the things that fans have expected over time, but also a few things that we added last year. We will continue to do those to make it worth folks coming in a little bit early, giving them that incentive to come. As they're coming in and you're planning your parking, it's important to remember, once again, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway parking is completely sold out this year. So if you do not have a parking pass already issued by the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, there isn't any parking available. So what you need to do is think about the town of Speedway and the neighbors in the town of Speedway where many, many people park. In fact, you can go to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway website and get some direction on some of those parking facilities and areas that are not controlled by us so that people can begin to plan when they come in here. So if you don't have a parking placard, you will not be able to park inside the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, with one small exception that will probably be no longer an exception by the end of the day tomorrow or Friday for sure. We have a very, very limited number of ADA parking spaces available, but those must also be pre-assigned and pre-purchased before coming to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. I believe we're less than 100 of those remaining. So if you're coming to the Indy 500 on Friday or Sunday, you will not be able to get in even with a placard because we have assigned all of the current ADA spaces. So you must get one of those spaces if you want them. We had issues last year where we ran out of ADA spacing by 6:30 in the morning, and we turned a lot of folks away because we just didn't have the facility to take care of them. So this year we've pre-assigned those. So we've got about 100 of those that folks can take advantage of if they check with the IMS website or call the IMS ticketing office. The other thing to remind people is don't put Indianapolis Motor Speedway in your GPS if you haven't been here before. If you do that, you'll end up getting routed to 16th Street as if you're going to the museum. And as I just said, you cannot get in there without a placard, and you'll end up sitting in a long line on 16th Street, only to be more frustrated when you get to the Speedway and be told that you can't enter. We do have taxi and Uber options. The taxi drop-off and return area is at 10th and Polko, so immediately out gate 2, the tunnel, south about 0.6 of a mile. That's where the taxi drop-off and pickup will be. Ubers will be dropped off and picked up at Main Street and Gilman just north of 10th Street on Main Street in the town of Speedway. For Uber customers that come to the Speedway, when you are leaving, you will not be able to call your Uber until you get out of the Speedway and in the general vicinity of Main and Gilman. Fans will be reminded when they try to get that by a message that'll come up on their Uber that tells them where they have to go to get those Ubers. So if you're thinking you can call your Uber from your turn 3 or turn 4 seat, you'll need to actually move back down to where you were dropped off before you can get in the queue to pick up an Uber. So that's a little bit different from last year. We also have a shuttle service that leaves from the Indianapolis the Indianapolis airport and brings you to the Speedway and then drops you back at the airport. It's $10 to park at the airport, and you can reserve those shuttle spaces online as well. Again, coolers. 14 by 14 by 18. My mom joked with me after my first couple of years working here at the Speedway and how many times I did interviews, and she said, I paid for your college so that you could say 14 by 14 by 18 on TV. And I've said that probably 500 times at the time I've been here at the Speedway, but it's important to remember we will not let anybody in the facility through the pedestrian gates with 14 by 14, but with coolers that are larger than 14 by 14 by 18. Those coolers will be checked, so please remember not to have glass bottles, not to have weapons. There's selfie sticks. There's a handful of things on our website that you can see that you cannot bring into the Speedway for safety reasons, and just be prepared to do that when you come in and show those as you come in the gates. Again, one of the reasons to be early is because we want to make sure that you don't stand in line too long as you go through the cooler checks. For those that are coming with small children, remember that we allow strollers, but we do not allow wagons or carts. On practice days, oftentimes you'll see folks pulling people around in wagons. Just because of the sheer number of folks here, wagons and carts are not allowed at the Speedway on race day. If you haven't purchased your tickets yet, there are tickets still available at IMS.com that you can purchase for either GA or online. We also have a ticket exchange that is authorized now. So we just once again caution people, if you're buying a ticket to the Indy 500, we encourage that you buy it either from IMS.com or buy it from our authorized ticket exchange. We cannot, if you don't purchase through one of those two mechanisms and you end up with a counterfeit ticket, and it does happen every year, there are people that end up with counterfeit tickets. We cannot help you because we can't guarantee that a ticket you've purchased from someone else is a good ticket. So please pay attention to that. Gates on race day will open at 6 a.m. Even if it's raining, it'll open at 6 a.m. So our gates will open at 6 a.m. And then if you are in the parking lots and have paid parking, you can begin to park at 5 a.m. in those parking lots, with the exception of infield. And once we open the gates at 6, then the turn 3 parking and other parking inside the facility will be open. But again, it's just really important to remember, don't try and park in the Speedway or one of the Speedway lots unless you have an Indianapolis Motor Speedway parking ticket or parking pass. Then the last thing, if you park in the infield, you will not be allowed to leave the Speedway. It's usually somewhere between 45 minutes and an hour. So I would encourage you, if you park inside, to plan on sitting in your car or staying in your grandstand seat and watching the victory lap with the driver that goes around, watching the big screens and some of the victory celebration. But the infield will not open up to allow traffic to exit until about an hour after the race is concluded. That is because there are so many pedestrians on the roads that we can't mix them with the vehicles, especially on the west side of the facility. So if you're in the infield, it'll be an hour after the checkered flag, at least 45 minutes, probably more likely an hour, until we begin to move people out of the Speedway. And I guess so we ask you to prepare, be patient, and come early. And I guess at some level I would ask you on the back end just to be patient and hang out for a little bit. Let some of the traffic just disperse. Enjoy that time with your family and your friends and those folks that you might only see one time a year who sit in the same area that you sit. Enjoy what I hope is another great Indianapolis 500. And then the later you leave, the less chaos there will be as you are heading out of the facility. So that's the general overview today. I think we'll probably do another one of these tomorrow and again on Saturday. And when we hear any kind of confirmation one way or the other from the Vice President's office, we will be sure to let each of you know, and then we can begin to determine how and if that will impact any of our customers here at the Speedway. And I think with that, I can take any questions. So the question was, if the vice president comes, what kind of changes might we have to look at? To be real honest with you, we don't know. Obviously, when the vice president or the president travels to any kind of venue, there are Secret Service requirements and some of the other things that go along with moving the president or vice president from one point to another. So we are beginning to just try and figure out if he's here and what kind of movement there might be, where do we have to worry about either stopping pedestrian flow to get him from one point to another, or what we have to do from additional security measures. Again, I don't think we will know all of that until we know for sure if he's coming, and at that point it's probably going to be a 48-hour nonstop, wide awake, everybody, all hands on deck here at the Speedway to make sure that we can do that. Our biggest goal in all of this, and frankly I believe it would be the vice president's goal as well if he actually does come, is that we don't impact our customers, or if we do, we impact them in the least amount as possible. Mike Pence is a longtime Indy 500 attendee. I believe, I was trying to get it confirmed, but I believe he's come to at least 30 Indianapolis 500s, and I think the second lady may have been actually been to more 500s than the vice president, so that he would come as a fan, and only as a fan. There's no official role related to the Indianapolis 500. Again, I think as a Hoosier and somebody who understands the meaning of the Indianapolis 500, I think he would do it in a way that is the least impactful of the customer experience as possible. Yes?
Doug, severe weather. It's race day, it's going to rain, probably, maybe. What's the plan to protect fans from severe weather? Where do you throw all these people when things get ugly quickly?
So the question was about severe weather, and I'm going to answer it in two ways, and they're going to be relatively vague answers, and I'll explain why. You've seen it a little bit already this month. The most important thing we can do is inform the folks that are here at the venue as early as we can when weather's approaching. And even on days that there's no weather approaching, we'll put up a radar on the screens, because we want our fans, when they're here, to get used to looking to that radar for information so that they can make their own decision when they feel uncomfortable with the way that weather is approaching the Speedway. As more severe weather comes, we will be more regular in the way that we're communicating that messaging to folks. Obviously, if lightning's here, we had it happen a couple of times already this year, we will ask people to exit the grandstands and sort of follow their own safety plan. And that's the reason on the front end we're starting to give people heads up so that they know in the back of their mind what they're going to try and do. It's such a big venue, it is really difficult to specify exactly what to do. As it relates to severe weather and a real plan on when we might evacuate or what could cause us to ask people to leave, we're reluctant to say, here's the plan, because I don't want information to get out to people that says, if it's this, we're going to do X, Y, and Z. And then what ends up happening is it's never this. It's this with some tweak, which means we're probably going to, they may need to operate in a different way. So I hate to get on the front end and say this is exactly what we want to do, and then we are faced with a marginally different scenario, and you have people that have seen something and then they're going to go do something we might not want them to do. So we will inform fans from as early as we can how the weather's looking. We'll make sure we continue to keep them updated, especially if we know weather is coming through, to help them make that decision. And to the extent that lightning is a factor, we will make sure that we are asking people to leave at the appropriate time. For the Indy 500, for example, even the camera crews, once we get sort of within that 10-mile radius is the point at which time even camera crews, we are pulling them down. So if camera crews are coming down, then obviously that impacts the broadcast. So we will make sure people know. Again, we just really want people to, that's one of those things when you prepare. If weather comes, I know where I sit, I know where I park. Do I want to go to my car? Do I want to find shelter somewhere else? We really try and leave that up to the fans based on where they are. Remember, this is a 275-acre facility, and if you took the way the crow flies from turn 1 to turn 3, it's a mile in distance. So where you sit can be completely different with your options to where others folks sit. So we try and give people that opportunity to make their own plan. Again, so the question was, are there safe shelter places? Again, it depends on the situation. So that's why we want to be a little bit careful of saying this is a safe shelter, because something that might be safe for hail and a heavy rain may not be safe for high winds, may not be safe for lightning. So we really are reluctant to say this is a safe shelter place because we want to be careful. A perfect example of that could be our tunnels, right? A tunnel might be a place to be safe in one instance, but if it's a huge downpour and it could be, the way Indiana and flooding happens. So we want to be real careful where we tell people to go and what to do. So we're going to sort of wait until we see that instance, or what we're actually dealing with when it happens.
Quick question.
So the question was, what's the energy level like in the city of Indianapolis for the 101st running of the Indy 500 comparison to something like the Super Bowl? I will tell you that Hoosiers, especially Central Indiana Hoosiers, find no more pride in anything than they do the way that we welcome people to this community, whether it's a Super Bowl or the Indy 500 or a Final Four or some sort of amateur international competition. We love to host people from around the world. We love to host people from the country. I would tell you that the energy level in Indianapolis right now is on the level of the 100th running energy level for sure, and in a lot of ways it is better than the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl was in February. It was colder, and people were excited about that. But I can't go anywhere in this city without people talking to me about their story of what the Indianapolis 500's meant to them. It's meant to their family, whether they go to the race or not. So the energy level, I think, is really strong. As you all know, last year was the 100th, and as a team, we were worried that the 100th running of the Indy 500 might be a reason for people to decide to move on and not continue to support the Indianapolis 500. And we have been amazed at the number of people who are coming to this race. And as I said, it could be the strongest Indy 500 attendance in 15 years, with the exception of last year. So I think the energy level is fantastic, and part of that's due in part to certainly this community. It's also due in part to the team that we have here at the Speedway. And we were able to steal some of those good Super Bowl folks, Allison Mellangton being one of them, Mike Bates being another one, that were really intimately involved in that event. So we've been able to carry some of that energy level that they brought to the community for that event, to the community for this event.
Doug, over here.
Yeah. Hey, Steve.
You're going to have the same number of gates open as last year, and are there going to be express lanes again for people that don't have backpacks, coolers, that kind of stuff?
So we are having the same number of gates open that we had last year. We will which was somewhere just over 200. So we will have that same number again this year. So all of the gates, it will have the ability to get people in the same. I do not believe we're having express gates this year. Is that correct? So we are not having express gates this year, and we really don't believe it'll be an issue. But I'm going to confirm that and make sure that that is in fact the case. And we'll let you know here shortly, Steve. Yep.
A more specific question. I'm coming from Spain. How do you rate, from your position, how do you rate the impact of Alonso coming here and for the race, ticket sales, whatever? How do you rate this participation in the race? Thank you.
So the question was about Fernando Alonso and how do we rate having him here as it relates to the impact of the race. I think having Fernando Alonso, who has a full-time ride in Formula One, decide to step out of what's arguably the most important race in F1 and come run the Indy 500, which we would argue is the most important race in the world, has benefited us. And it may not necessarily have benefited us in the ticket sales to the amounts that maybe some people thought it might, but I certainly think it has benefited us in terms of the buzz, the excitement. I do think that our drivers are more energized. A lot of those drivers grew up, our younger drivers in particular, grew up watching Fernando run and are thrilled with the idea that they could compete against him. But the thing I've noticed the most, and the piece I think is the most important to Fernando Alonso's participation in this event, is the way that he has embraced it, and he has participated in the Indy 500 like every other driver has participated in it. I sat in the grandstands for the first 5 or 6 runs of the Fast 9 on Sunday. And the excitement our fans had for Fernando Alonso participating was really neat to see, and it's because they see how genuine he is about his excitement in participating. So the way he's approached the 500, I think, has endeared him to our fan base. So while it's certainly had an effect from international exposure and international interest, I think the neatest part about it is, especially for him, I think he's probably gained a lot of U.S. fans that he might not have had because of the way he's approached the Indianapolis 500. And I know the drivers are thrilled to have him, and so are we. And it's just one more element for the 101st running that I think's made it a more intriguing event. And I do think, in general, as you add it up with other things, it's been impactful and helped us.
Doug, you talked a lot about race day. I'm interested in the concerts that you're going to have down here. Are there going to be any additional measures given what happened in England, given the proximity to the main road through there, and given the concentration of fans in one area?
So, the question is about our concerts and the number of fans in that one area. You know, there's probably not an area inside the facility that is more policed than our concert areas. So we already are staffed with not just private security, but law enforcement in general. It is a very well focused area for Saturday. Because of the concert. You're not allowed to bring coolers in on Saturday, so we eliminate the whole cooler element for Saturday. So that isn't an issue, and folks are checked as they come through to get into the concert venue piece. And we believe that on Friday we're prepared just with the number of folks we have around, and I think I mentioned that there will be a large number of both visibly armed and undercover police officers on site. So I think we're in good shape. And again, Mike Bates and Ted Freeze and his team continue to work with local and state and federal law enforcement agencies to make sure that we're on top of that. There is there's very, very limited traffic on Holman behind the stage area, so we do control a lot of what's happening in that area. So I don't know that that's necessarily a risk, if that's what you meant by the road through the facility.
Doug, you mentioned IMS parking all sold out. To be clear, does that include the area formerly known as the Coke Lot?
So it does include the area formerly known as the Coke Lot. That area is sold out. So if you don't have a pass for that, you need to think about where else you could go. There is an outside chance, and we'll know more on event day, that we could have the very, very western edge of that available, but right now it is not. So everything is sold out. Anybody else have any questions? So thank you. We will update you as we learn things from Washington, D.C., and we'll also update you of any changes or any alerts that we might get, and hopefully we'll have an update sometime tomorrow.